Hey, everyone. Ready for something pretty cool?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Today, we're going to dive deep into this idea of the perception box.
Ooh, I like that.
It's how, like, our brains kind of create their own filter for how we see things.
Right, like our own little world.
Based on what we've experienced.
Yeah.
And sometimes even those biases we don't even know we have.
Yeah, for sure.
To unpack all this, we've got some awesome sources.
Okay, cool.
We've got a neuroscientist, a neuroanatomist who actually recovered from a stroke,
Wow.
an education expert, and even a philosopher neuroscientist who talks about conversation like in our crazy divided world.
Wow, that's a lot.
I know, right?
All right, so
So are you ready to kind of unlock how you see things?
I am.
Maybe even see the world in a whole new way.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go.
I love this topic. It really gets you thinking, how much of what we think is real is actually just our brains making it up?
Right. Like it's not even really objective reality.
Totally.
So how does this perception box even get built in the first place?
Good question.
Our neuroscientist, Nicole Vignola, says it starts really early with those observations we make as kids.
Right.
The stuff we see and experience.
Yeah.
That becomes like the foundation for how we understand ourselves and the world around us.
It's amazing how much we just learn by watching,
Yeah.
Vignola calls it observational knowledge. Like, think about riding a bike.
Yeah.
Did you, read a manual?
Definitely not.
No, you watch someone else do it first.
Yeah.
And think of all the other skills and beliefs you've picked up that way.
That's so true. Like I learned to cook by watching my grandmother.
There you go.
But Vignola also talks about this thing called confirmation bias. And this is where it gets a little tricky.
Oh, boy.
So confirmation bias is like our brain's tendency to look for information that just backs up what we already believe, even if those beliefs aren't really good for us.
Oh, so we're picking and choosing evidence to fit our own story.
Yes.
Even if that story is holding us back.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And this bias can be so subtle, we don't even know what's happening.
Wow, that's scary.
Like if you think you're bad at math, you might unconsciously focus on every mistake you make, which just reinforces that belief.
Makes sense.
Even if you're actually capable of doing well.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, kind of.
Totally. Okay, so we've got this perception box built from these early experiences.
Okay.
Plus this confirmation bias keeping us on those well-worn paths.
Gotcha.
But how does our brain actually create this reality we experience?
Right. How does that actually work?
This is where Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor's story just blows my mind.
Oh, I know Dr. Taylor. She's amazing.
She's a neuroanatomist who had a stroke.
Wow.
And she was actually able to study her own brain as it was happening.
You're kidding.
I know, crazy, right? So she explains that our brain isn't just one thing.
Right.
It's like a whole team of characters all working together.
Interesting.
And she calls them characters because they represent different aspects of our brain, each with its own specific role.
So what are these characters?
Well, there's left brain thinking, which is that logical, analytical part.
Okay.
Then there's left brain emotion, which is more about order and details.
Makes sense.
Then we have right brain emotion, which is all about feelings and connection.
Oh.
And finally, right brain thinking, which is like the big picture creative side.
That's so fascinating. It's like we have all these different parts of ourselves.
I know.
All contributing to how we see things and make decisions.
No wonder we're such complex creatures, right?
Totally.
But how do these characters actually interact, to shape our experience of the world?
Yeah, how does that all work together?
Well, imagine you're trying to decide if you should take a new job.
Okay, yeah.
Your left brain thinking character might be analyzing the salary and benefits.
Right.
While your left brain emotion character is worrying about fitting in with the new team.
Yeah, you don't want to rock the boat.
Then your right brain emotion might be all excited about the challenge. And your right brain thinking is seeing how this job fits into your long-term goals.
So it's like this big internal debate.
Exactly. All these characters are having a conversation, and the final decision comes from that whole complex interaction.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Right. And it makes me think of Vignola's story about her friend Samantha.
Oh, yeah. What about her?
So Samantha was a crazy good dancer.
Okay.
But her family only ever focused on that one talent. And she actually felt limited by their perception of her.
Oh, wow.
Like she was stuck in a box labeled dancer.
That's so sad.
It makes you wonder how many of us are living with those labels, those limitations.
Right.
That might actually be more about other people's perceptions than our own true potential.
That's deep.
It's like a big reminder that the messages we receive, especially early on, can totally shape how we see ourselves.
And we don't even realize it half the time.
Right. And it highlights how important it is to question those messages and any assumptions that might be holding us back.
Absolutely. You got to break free from those boxes.
So we got this perception box built from experiences, biases,
right,
and sometimes even other people's expectations.
It's a lot to unpack.
But what if the ways we usually measure intelligence and success are actually missing a huge part of the picture?
What do you mean?
Like, what if those standardized tests we all took don't really capture the full range of what humans can do?
I've never thought about it that way.
Well, that's the challenge that Mary Helen Immordino-Yang throws out there.
Okay.
She's our education expert.
Okay, so what does she say?
She argues that traditional intelligence tests are like looking through a tiny keyhole at a massive landscape. They only measure a very specific set of skills.
Oh, so we're getting a very limited view then.
Right. They often focus on like predefined problems with just one right answer.
Yeah, those kinds of tests can be frustrating.
It makes you think.
Yeah.
What about people who thrive in those messy real-world situations where there's not always a clear right answer?
Totally. Like, what about the people who are amazing at adapting to new challengers?
Yes.
Thinking creatively.
Yeah.
Coming up with innovative solutions on the fly.
Those are all valuable forms of intelligence too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it.
Yep.
What skills or talents do you have that might not show up on a traditional test?
That's a good question.
What unique strengths do you bring to the table that might get overlooked?
Yeah.
In a system designed to measure how well you color inside the lines.
Oh, okay. That's something to think about.
Right.
Okay. I need a minute to process all this.
Me too. It's like we're so focused on measuring how well people climb the existing ladder that we forget to ask if they might be capable of building a whole new one.
Oh, I love that. So if our perception boxes are like built from these limited experiences and measurements, are we just stuck with them?
Well, the good news is our brains are crazy adaptable.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Vignola talks about this thing called the plasticity of the brain, meaning it can actually change and rewire itself throughout our lives.
Really?
Yeah. We're not fixed. We can actually create new neural pathways and like shift those old thought patterns.
That's so encouraging to hear. But I imagine it's not always easy though, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like our brains probably like those familiar paths, those well-worn routines.
It's comfortable, right?
So how do we actually start carving out those new trails in our thinking?
It takes effort. Conscious effort. Vignola uses this metaphor of a well-paved highway to represent like our ingrained thought patterns.
Okay, yeah.
It's the easiest path, the one our brains just naturally default to.
Right.
But creating new neural pathways, that's like venturing off onto a bumpy dirt road.
Ooh, okay, I see.
It's going to take more effort, more deliberate choice to forge those new connections.
It's like we have to become explorers in our own minds.
Exactly.
Hacking through the underbrush to create those new pathways. But that sounds exhausting.
Well, yeah.
Are there any, like, shortcuts or tools we can use to make this rewiring process a bit easier?
There are, actually. One super simple but powerful technique Vignola suggests.
Okay, what's that?
Is focusing on what she calls our small wins.
Small wins?
Yeah, like those little moments of success we often just overlook or dismiss.
Oh, okay.
Think about it. How often do you dwell on the things that went wrong?
All the time.
Right, the mistakes you made, the goals you didn't quite reach.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
I'm definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
It's like my brain has a spotlight constantly looking for what's wrong or what could be better.
It's like that negativity bias.
Oh, yeah.
But by shifting our attention to those small wins, even the tiny ones, we start to counter that negativity bias. It's like planting little seeds of positivity.
I like that.
Nurturing those new pathways that lead to a more like optimistic and resilient way of thinking.
This reminds me of Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor's recovery from a stroke.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about rewiring the brain. She spent 8 years painstakingly regaining her abilities. It's proof that even after severe brain trauma, recovery and rewiring are possible.
It's incredible. Her story is like a testament to the brain's ability to change.
Yeah.
And a powerful reminder that we all have the potential to reshape our thinking even when facing huge challenges.
It's inspiring, right?
Totally. If she can rewire her brain after a stroke, then what's stopping us from making the positive changes we want?
That's the question, isn't it? So what's the key? How do we do it?
Well, it takes being deliberate and consistent. Just like building physical strength requires regular exercise. Strengthening our mental agility requires regular practice.
So we have to choose those new paths, those more empowering thought patterns.
Right.
And keep practicing them until they become our new default.
Exactly.
I can do that. Okay, so we've been talking about rewiring our individual perception boxes.
Right.
But what about, like, the bigger picture? How did these limited perceptions play out in the real world, especially in a world that feels more and more divided and polarized?
That's where Sam Harris's ideas about conversation come in.
Okay.
He argues that in a world struggling with misinformation and conflict...
Yeah, it feels like that's everywhere these days.
Right. Genuine, open-minded conversation is more important than ever.
I think I agree with that. So what does he say?
Harris believes we're constantly facing a choice.
A choice between what?
Conversation and violence.
Whoa, okay. That's a powerful way to put it.
And he says conversation is the only real antidote to conflict.
So, like, it's the bridge that allows us to connect across our differences.
Exactly.
To find some common ground.
Right.
To understand other perspectives.
It's the only way forward.
But sometimes it feels like having those productive conversations is almost impossible.
Yeah, I get that.
Especially with people who have totally different views.
It can be tough, for sure.
How do we even begin to bridge those divides when everyone's stuck in their echo chambers?
Yeah, just reinforcing their own limited perceptions.
Right.
It's definitely a challenge, but Harris argues the first step is acknowledging the role of bad ideas.
Bad ideas?
Yeah, in perpetuating conflict and suffering.
Yeah.
If our beliefs are based on, like, faulty or incomplete information,
Okay.
if our perception boxes are built on shaky foundations,
Right.
it's no wonder we end up clashing with people who see things differently.
That makes sense.
Well,
so how do we break out of those echo chambers then?
yeah, how do we actually have those difficult but essential conversations?
Right. It's easy to say be open-minded, but it's a lot harder to actually do it.
For sure.
When you're faced with those ingrained beliefs and biases,
Right.
how do we move beyond just, like, politely disagreeing
Right.
to actually understanding and maybe even learning from those different viewpoints?
Harris emphasizes intellectual honesty, which starts with being willing to examine our own beliefs.
Okay.
He says, ask yourself, am I really open to being wrong?
Hmm.
Am I willing to change my mind if I see compelling evidence?
Those are tough questions.
Yeah.
It's like we have to be willing to deconstruct our own perception boxes.
In a way, yeah.
To admit that our way of seeing the world might not be the only valid one.
It's about humility.
And that can be uncomfortable, right?
It can be, but it's also incredibly liberating.
Okay, I see that.
Because when we step outside of those rigid belief systems,
Yeah.
when we choose curiosity and humility, we open ourselves up to a much richer, more nuanced understanding of the world.
And the people in it.
Right, exactly.
Like upgrading from a black and white TV to a high-definition, full-color experience.
I love that. And not only do we see the world more clearly,
Yeah.
but we can also connect with people in a more genuine and compassionate way.
I like where this is going. Okay, so we've explored how these perception boxes are built.
Right.
How they can limit us and how we can rewire them for a more expansive view of ourselves and the world. But what does all this mean for our daily lives?
Right. Like, how do we actually use this stuff?
Exactly. How can we apply these insights to our relationships,
Yeah.
our work, even just the way we consume information?
This is where it gets really practical and exciting. Because once we understand this power of the perception box, we can start to use it to our advantage.
Okay, I like that.
We can become more aware of our own biases, more intentional about the information we take in,
Right.
and more skillful at communicating with people who see things differently.
So instead of feeling trapped by our perceptions,
Yeah.
we can actually use them as a tool for growth and connection.
It's empowering.
That is a pretty empowering thought.
Like we're taking back control of the lens through which we see the world.
Yeah.
And that can make all the difference in how we navigate all the complexity of life relationships and even global challenges.
Okay, I'm ready for part 3. It feels like we've been handed this amazing toolkit for understanding ourselves and, like, the world around us.
Right.
We've explored how our perception boxes are constructed, how they can limit us, and most importantly, how we can rewire them for a more, expansive and empowering view of life.
It's exciting stuff. So let's recap some of the key takeaways from our deep dive into the perception box. We learned that our brains are constantly creating these filters based on our early experiences, observations, and even those sneaky biases that can sometimes lead us astray.
Right. Like those biases can be tricky. We discovered that these perceptions aren't fixed.
No, not at all.
Our brains are capable of change and growth.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing like that. Through conscious effort and practices like focusing on small wins,
Right.
we can actually rewire those ingrained thought patterns and create new pathways for a more positive and resilient outlook.
I like that. We also explored how these individual perceptions play out on a larger scale.
Right, like in the real world, influencing our relationships, our work, and even how we engage with the world around us.
It's all connected. And drawing on Sam Harris's insights, we talked about the crucial role of conversation in bridging those divides and navigating conflict.
Such an important topic. By embracing intellectual honesty, curiosity, and a willingness to challenge our own beliefs.
Yeah, that can be tough.
It can be. But we can transform those conversations from battles of opinions into opportunities for growth and understanding.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay, shoot.
Imagine a world where we all approached conversations with genuine curiosity, with a willingness to truly understand different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Even the ones that challenge our deeply held beliefs.
It's about opening up to new perspectives. What if, instead of shutting down or arguing, we leaned into those moments of discomfort?
Right.
Seeing them as opportunities to expand our understanding and build bridges of connection.
That's a powerful vision. And it starts with each of us. It starts with being aware of our own perception box.
Right.
Acknowledging those filters through which we see the world. And then choosing to engage with others with open hearts and open minds.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So as you go about your day, your week, your life, ask yourself, what beliefs might be holding me back? What new pathways am I ready to create?
And who knows? You might be surprised by what you discover just beyond the walls of your own perception box.
Exactly. There's a whole world out there waiting to be explored. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.